I'll do my best. Thank you for coming out this evening. My name is Laura Newman, and I work for Widener Apartment Homes and have represented Widener Apartment Homes' interest in the Colorado Springs area for the past 6 years. And I'm coming up on my 20-year mark of living in the Colorado Springs, Manitou Springs area. I'm going to introduce the rest of our team that's here tonight. So I just introduced myself. There's also Greg Serbama that's here in the front row, and he's here from Kirkland, Washington. He's vice president with Widener Apartment Homes. And Nick, who was just shaking hands, Nowatarski, welcome him tonight as well. So someone asked me earlier, who's here from Widener? So you have 3 of us here, although there's several other people on our development team that we're going to introduce. And Brad Nichols from YOW is here. Is Jonathan here with you tonight, by the way, Brad? Okay. And then with Kimberly Horn, we have Jim Hauk. We're going to hear from him. And then from SM Roca, Traffic Engineering, we have Mike Roca here this evening. And also, we do have a representative from the City of Colorado Springs, but the City of Colorado Springs has changed the way that the planning process is handled. So they do not lead the meetings. The developer is responsible for doing so. So Bill Gray, if you could just wave your hand, is here as an attendee. And he'll be taking some notes, but he will not have active participation because that's a change in the structure. We are going to try to keep this meeting tonight to 1 hour, but certainly we're going to be available to answer the questions at the end of this presentation. But I do want to say, help yourself to the water in the back if you need. There are also restrooms right outside this door here if you need to use those. I just want to give a brief recap of this particular site that we're going to be discussing this evening for those of you who have not been in a previous public meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, you were just waving to somebody. Have been in a previous meeting. The initial zoning was a light industrial. And then in April of 2008, that zoning for this particular parcel, and there'll be a map that comes up so you can see exactly where the lines are and so forth. In April of 2008, it changed to commercial use. And then in that same year, and this is before Widener got involved, it was changed to planned business center commercial use, and that was in August of 2008. And with that zoning change, we are allowed to do a residential development with a conditional use permit. And so it's important to explain that, and if there's questions around that, please feel free to ask at the end of the presentation. That's very different than any of our neighboring developments that you may have attended where they're seeking a zoning change. This is a conditional use permit, so the process is different and more condensed than those who are seeking a zoning change. So a project update thus far. This is actually our 3rd public meeting. We had one in October of last year, and then there was an outcry from the neighborhood because there was not this level of attendance. I don't remember, 20 people or less were here, and there was an outcry that there was not enough notification from the city. And so although the city did exactly what their responsibilities were for mailing within this certain distance and putting the posters up and so forth, we decided we're going to hold another meeting because there was the perception that we were not open with our development. And so we held one on November 1st at the church, and there was probably, as many of you I recognize in the room, 60 to 70 people that were in attendance at that particular meeting. That would have meant we went through the public process and it was ready for submittal. However, our development was seeking a variance related to a detention pond, which triggered the need to have another public meeting. Since that particular time, we have found a way to not require that variance. And so this meeting is not a necessary part of the process. However, there has been enough emails and phone calls to the planning departments within the city that we elected to go forward with this 3rd public meeting, which is not necessarily something that the city requires. So I just wanted to make mention of that. So we removed the need for the variance, and if you want to know more about the detention pond and what we did, we're happy to tell you about that. We also reduced the density of the project, and you're going to hear more about that, but we took away 6 of the planned units since the last time we met a year ago. We also heard from some the need for some additional green space that would be available to the public for dog walking and gathering. And so we also added that to the plans that we're going to show you this evening. And secondly, and perhaps most importantly, or most vocal, was the fact that our traffic study was challenged because it took place when 30th Street was closed due to the construction. And so we authorized and paid for a second traffic study, which Mike will be presenting to you tonight, the findings of that study to all of you. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jim. Yes, sir. Okay. Do you mean everything that I just said prior to you couldn't see? I did verbally say everything that was in writing, but are you saying I need to do that again? Or do you want me to take the lights down? Is that, I don't know how to control. Okay, so let's just see if we can drag this here. Okay, and let me just go back a couple slides just to see. Are you able to see that now, or still no? So I'll.
Let's try turning the light on.
Okay, there's seats in the front row if you need. But I did not verbally say anything that's up here. I verbally said, and then some, what's listed is bullet items. So if we need to go back through those at some point, I'm happy to do so. And then this particular map, I'm going to turn it over to Jim just to talk about the existing site this evening. Thank you. Jim.
Thank you, Laura. Again, my name is Jim Houck. I'm with Kimley Horn, helping on the planning side. These maps that you're going to see are also illustrated over here on these boards on the side. So I know some of those were looked at earlier, but they'll be up here for the rest of the evening. We want to just give you a little context again, and I'm sure you've walked through this site or are familiar with it pretty well, interested in what things are happening in the neighborhood. Just for reference, Garden of the Gods, 30th Street. Again, it's one of our boards that are over on the side here. Just wanted to give you some context. I guess I need the clicker too, don't I? This site, this map, again, just begins to identify some of the uses that are adjacent to us. In the center here is the site, and again, for orientation, 31st Street, and Garden of the Gods, and Red Lake Brewery here, and our site that we're talking about is right here in the middle. Again, we have some of those boards and that information over on the side here. Again, just kind of giving you some context again, some of the open space, the employment opportunities that are identified here, as well as the existing multifamily in the area. As Laura had already mentioned, this site had gone through some zone changes and had identified some different uses than originally zoned way back when. In 2008, this plan represents an approved plan that went through the process for commercial use. And some of the context for this project that we want to talk about is within the existing zone and within the PBC, there are criteria for each of the zoning classifications, and this plan reflected the setbacks, the building heights, and such of that initial plan. So 45-foot height building heights, no max on the lot coverage under the PBC, and I think some of the things we want to consider here is kind of the massing and kind of the impacts of parking and buildings on this property itself as we move forward with the next plan. This plan begins This is our updated site plan from our last meeting. Again, want to touch a little on the conditional use process and where we're at. As mentioned, this is in a sense an allowed use within the PBC. The uniqueness of residential still requires us to build within the same setbacks, same building height envelopes, all of those standards that were associated with the commercial use. And we are doing well within those boundaries. Also, the process here that we're at right now is we've gone through the application process. Public notice has been up for review. And then we have one next step, which is planning commission at this point. Again, as mentioned, we're meeting the standards within the PBZ zone, C zone, sorry. And we're meeting also, gone through the exercise of doing the studies and reports with city staff, going through the exercise of reviewing the design to make sure that it fits within the framework of the infrastructure within this area. In a sense, it's been identified that we're not needing to add, long extensions of wastewater systems or pipelines or something like that. So we've identified and gone through that process, and we're in the process of finalizing those last comments today. With that, I want to hand it over to Greg to talk a little bit about some of the other objectives of the project.
Thank you. Yeah. My name is Greg Shabana, and I've been asked to talk a little bit about the case for housing. And that's as a direct result of us reviewing all of the questions that have come through. So the city has passed on all the emails, passed on a majority of the phone calls that have come to them. And so one of the reoccurring challenges that have been brought up by the community is why? Why do we need housing? And so I wanted to give just a few moments to talk a little bit about national trends and then break it down here to local trends. First and foremost, the U.S. needs to build over 4.3 million houses and apartments by 2035. And that's a macro number, but only 30% of that stock nationally has been built since 2000. So it's getting older. A full 44% has been built before 1980. Nationally, there are 38.9 million residents who contribute over $3 trillion to the local economy and pay over $350 billion in payroll taxes. Those 22 million apartment homes that I talk about through the U.S. pay about $58 billion worth of property taxes to their local cities. But for Colorado, breaking that down a little bit more, 266,000 new apartments are needed annually to meet demand, and that's according to Up for Growth in their groundbreaking 2022 housing under production study. That means the state is 127,000 units short of meeting that goal, which is about 101% increase in the underproduction since 2012. That ranks this state 7th in the United States in terms of severity of its housing deficit. So in regards to the Springs, you'll notice, and a lot of the comments indicated that there have been apartments that have been built significantly over the course of the last couple of years, and that is true. Yet it's still not meeting the production numbers that we need. Over 1,800 units have been permitted this year, and that's for development over the course of the next couple of years, and that's to catch up after years of underproduction, as I said. And specific to multifamily, the estimation in this, they're going to be about 4,000 units for the next 3 years. 4,000 units each year, permitted about 12,000 units here in Colorado Springs. 2022, there were 5,000 units, just for background. Interest rate escalation, cost of doing business, cost of land, all those sorts of things are no doubt will stall or scrap some of these projects. But the increasing population that we see here in the Springs, the quality of life and the solid job growth numbers that we've seen throughout El Paso County and specifically here in Colorado Springs means that's why there's so many investments into multifamily projects. The markets are reacting as they should. As we start to get to a point where we're building these units, rental rates are coming down. In early 2021, vacancy rates were as low as 3.8%. In other words, there was not enough product out there for people who wanted to live in multifamily housing. It's the same conversation you would have in single-family housing, whether you're talking about purchasing or whether you're talking about renting. But now we're seeing vacancy rates upwards of 9%. In other words, there's more choices out there for people who are looking for those opportunities. The particular location we're talking about, and we're here to talk about with you today, in our estimation, is perfectly suited for low to medium density construction of a garden-style community that we're talking about today. It really will provide an opportunity for those who live or who may work in the area to live in the area in which they want to be. And so that's why we want to bring a project like this to the market. I've said this before, and I see several faces that were here the last couple of times that we spoke. Mr. Wagner grew up in this area and has a fondness for it and wants to bring projects of quality to Colorado Springs, both in the suburbs, in the neighborhoods, as well as in downtown. And so that's our effort to do that in a garden-style community here at Eros West. So I'll let, I don't know who's next.
Hey everyone, Nick Nowatarski with Widener. Excited to be here in front of you today, and I just want to share a little bit about our site plan. So, as shown, the site's about 9.5 acres. It's all garden-style apartments, 3-story wood frame walk-up buildings. We're 222 units, and that's about 23 units per acre. That's a very low density site compared to mid-rise or high-rise building. Obviously, in the context of the neighborhood, you need to be wary of how does it fit in, and you'll see that we've tried to design with that in mind. First and foremost, we tried to design in character of the neighborhood. Like I said, these are 3-story buildings. They're 38 feet tall. Our zoning height allowed us to go up to 45, but we said no, 38. And part of that height is honestly to have sloped roofs, which better relate to the residential single-family homes in the area. Flat roofs are cheaper to build, but we think sloped roofs look better and would be better suited for this area. So that is one of the ways we thought about it. You'll notice that the site has a lot of greenery, lots of landscaping. The site's only about 62% impervious area. The rest is landscaping. For garden-style sites, a lot of times you'll see these numbers creep up into the 80s, even close to 90%. So, this is a relatively green site. We have lots of landscaping. Obviously, the whole western half of the country is dealing with water shortages. We've put very much a focus on native plants. We think that's important. We want it to feel green, we want it to feel lush, but at the same time, we're trying to be water conscious. You'll notice a couple other things. Parking, we are parked at about 1.5, just north of that, stalls per unit. That will be more than adequate to meet the demand of these units. So parking will not be an issue for, sorry, I see you're raising your hand for a question. We'll get to you right at the end if you're okay. But I will make sure to get you. But parking will all be self-contained on site. A little bit about us. We're a long-term owner-builder. We're not a merchant developer who's going to build this and 1 year later flip it and walk away from it. We are very rarely a net seller. When we build it, we're building high quality product that we intend to keep for 20, 30, 40 years. We're not cutting corners on it. I'll kick it over to Brad in a couple minutes and he'll talk a little bit about our design. But this isn't just stamp it out, repeat. Like, this is something important to us. We know it's something important to the neighborhood. We want it to look like it belongs here and feels good. We take real pride in ownership and going and designing it. A couple other things to point out. We've extended some green space throughout the site. Right here, we're still figuring it out, but probably that will be a dog park. So that's one bit, and like I said, there's just a lot of landscaping. Maybe the last thing I want to point out is, like I said, these buildings are all 38 feet tall. This slope right here, that kind of blocks everything to the south, is about 95 feet taller than that. So when you look out towards this viewpoint, this is again, these are 3-story buildings. They're not going to tower over the neighborhood. They're going to look nice. There's lots of greenery. There'll be lots of landscaping. In some ways, we are hiding the gas station. That's maybe a pro in my book. But I want you to know that really.
Excuse me.
Yes.
How can that be a pro? How can that be a pro? You're isolating the business right here. You're undermining that business. You're undermining the red tape. this is something that doesn't belong in this community.
We-
I'll say it right now. You know what, there's apartments across the street, they don't need no more apartments. We need small businesses in the area.
Yes.
Similar. So I know you guys love it because, you know, the labor, I don't know how much money they have, but you know, they're probably gonna get in the pockets of our elected officials. What this is. It's a fact. It's a fact, people. Because they, you know, this is the third time you guys are doing this. You first wanted to do it on the other side of the road. And you didn't do it because people rejected it. They rejected it downtown. Now, you're doing it for the third time. I'm just expressing my opinion.
So,
Now, my opinion is probably the opinion of most people here.
Well, well,
A two-court
if-
proved that you can't put more than.
if you're okay, we'd like to finish our presentation and we can get into the public part of the presentation. You know, just, I respect what you're saying and we'll make sure to address it, but let us go through our side of the process and then we'll answer questions with the group. With that, I think that's the majority of what I wanted to say on overall site planning. With that, I'll give it over to Brad to talk about our building elevations.
So basically, talking about the buildings, we wanted to look at materials and color. This is, basically we're emulating the Foothills look with upscale sustainable materials such as stone, stucco, fiber cement panels. They use sustainable, fire-resistant materials. Basically, the color palette is more of a warm tone palette. We're kind of going away from this modern dual tone look that is kind of popular with a lot of buildings these days. As was said before, we do have sloped roofs. It's more of a single-family residential look. We have a lot of modulation to the building, along with balconies that give interest to the sides and the facades of the building, so they're not like a stale palette. Basically, the massing of the buildings, it does lead itself to openness of the site, which again kind of goes back to more of a single-family look to the site. And then we are providing amenities such as the open space, the clubhouse, the pool. We're trying to beef up the trail connection that goes along Garden of the Gods. Basically to create a sustainable community for this. That's all I have for elevations. Yeah, look at, you're looking out, this is from Red Leg. Basically, we're trying to show that, you know, these aren't giant buildings. We're
Can
not.
you step back to the side, please, so we can see?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're trying to not block the views. As you can see, it basically just kind of looks like a single-family residential community.
It doesn't.
This is just showing some of the things. I can turn it over to Mike to discuss the traffic.
All right, Brian. Good evening. Well, my name is Mike Roach. I'm with SM Roach LLC. We're traffic engineering consultants located at 6 South Takeout Street, Suite 618 here in Colorado Springs. As previously mentioned, we have reviewed from a traffic impact perspective. We reviewed the site twice. Our last attempt here, showing on these two first slides are just basically just summarizing, as mentioned earlier, kind of our first attempts, you know, looking at traffic, taking into consideration received city and neighborhood comments. The next slide here shows kind of how we've progressed through those revisions. We have, for our last neighborhood meeting, we have gone back and updated our analysis based on more recent traffic counts in the area. We've also taken into consideration, as mentioned earlier, some of the construction efforts that were going on, 30th, some of the detours that were being associated with 30th along Garden of the Gods. This was all part of the Garden of the Gods roundabout entry project. And then we've also looked at several different areas of construction that were going on at the time. We've incorporated all of that information with our analysis, and the end result is that we still end up with, from a weekday morning and afternoon operations perspective, we still find results that are still in compliance with the city standards for operations. And then we get into here, the next slide, which talks about, this is just a quick example of the reduction of site-generated traffic that is proposed with this project, and in comparison with the allowed zoning of a commercial retail component. So what we're showing that is from an assumed commercial retail component to what is being proposed, this project would be approximately reducing the number of traffic generation from this site at about 50%. The next. So that is compared to if it were to be built as a commercial.
How many of you people live here from the fire?
Here.
I lived here too.
Yeah.
See how crazy it was when we tried to
If you could
evacuate?
just let him finish,
That's
okay,
okay.
and then
Yeah,
we'll
I
hear
know,
it.
but
Okay,
we're just being honest.
okay, I understand that you're being honest.
So, how is it that
Are we being honest?
No.
January 23 is a traffic study? Why not July 4th? Thank you.
So it's so,
Can you hold your question, sir,
right.
till the end?
And this is my last slide, and again, I'm going to keep it brief because we do have other slides to present, other site information to present, but we are available to answer what we're anticipating to be more traffic questions or fire evacuation questions and so forth. So in conclusion, what we've looked at is our findings of our study that has been reviewed and approved to date through the city traffic engineering staff is that this site being proposed as a residential component does not negatively impact the existing roadways, 30th Street, Garden of the Gods, the intersections, and that no improvements, no special improvements are being recommended as part of this project. So that concludes my presentation, and again, keeping it brief so that we can allow time at the end of the meeting to discuss further questions. Thank you.
We're almost to the conclusion of our presentation, and we're going to open up the floor. So I just want to reiterate that it is our third neighborhood meeting, and even though there is some disagreement in the room on whether a commercial facility, depending on what the commercial building would be, and the number of vehicular impact that goes on with a commercial building that's already been approved, that could be 45 feet in height, our independent traffic engineer says there is less impact with a residential community. So that's a point that we believe is factual, or we would not be presenting it. And less visual impact, again, is the scope of what a commercial building that's already approved for zoning that could go into that particular area. It is smaller in scope. The project actually meets all of the city development standards. And so we did do the second traffic study because of the feedback. You mentioned why in January, because we did it quickly after we got the feedback. Our neighborhood meetings were in October and November, and then in the first quarter of the following year is when we did the traffic study. And then we also finished the trail completion, the sidewalk and the easement that is located on that particular site. I don't know what happened to that clicker exactly. Mike, did you keep it by chance? Oh, thanks. Oops. So what the next steps would be for this particular project, and these are tentative dates. is that mid-November, right, that's right around the corner, the team will make a final submittal with the site plan updates. And mid-December, the city would be, well, the city will send it back to us prior to that, but we would respond to any comments that the city had. And then mid-January, we would present in front of the Planning Commission. Because again, this is a conditional use permit. That is the process that is followed for this particular project. So now I'm going to open it up to questions, but I know, Nick, you had someone that you said would get back to. Can you point that person out so they can be
This
next?
gentleman right here is the verification.
Okay.
I have a parking question.
Okay, should we, I thought we had a, do we have a
That's
second?
all right, I can speak loud enough. We have a parking question.
Parking
What
question.
are we gonna do without a parking lot?
Well, the brewery isn't here tonight. I don't think Todd Baldwin with Red Leg is here this evening. So you know that project was approved with the parking that they currently have. And anytime they were parking on our particular lot, that was us at a courtesy allowing them to use that. I know they
Filled
are.
up the whole lot with cars.
And I don't think that we can stand in front of you as the developer of a residential community and tell you what Red Lake Brewery, who's been an incredible neighbor to us, can do. I think that's a question specifically for that particular business. But we are in conversations with them as it relates to creative solutions, but I don't think it's our place to talk about that. I think that that is something that should be brought forward with that particular business.
If I can add one thing, I think your question underscores one of the issues we tried to bring up, is that from a commercial standpoint, if you build a commercial building there, the amount of trip generations you have, as according to the study that we've done twice now, would be more than what it would be for a residential unit. So that is one of the issues that I think is from a fairness perspective, that's what we're trying to communicate.
I know you did a driving
Analysis, yep.
study and stuff like that. Did you do a parking study?
Yeah, we did not do an independent parking study, just because the parking that was being proposed was already in compliance with city standards.
Thank you. And help me with next. I don't know who was next. I think that gentleman back in the, okay. You know what, maybe I'll just share the microphone so the audience can.
So Laura, earlier you mentioned, and I couldn't follow you, there was a 6-unit drop. What does that mean? Because I had 7. And I'd like to have you explain more about the variance not needed.
Happy to answer that. So, as you recall, part of the reason why we called this meeting was to talk originally about a variance we were requesting related to, we have 2 detention ponds on site, right here and right here. The variance was actually related to those ponds. We actually moved this pond very, very slightly and pulled this building right here off this corner, moved it in a little bit, and we cut out 2 stacks of units to make that happen. So yeah, 6 units total. So originally when we were here last time, we presented 228 units. Because we thought, hey, we need to move this detention pond around a little bit, we could go down to 222 units and still have this work for what we're trying to achieve here. So that's where the difference in density comes from. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, as you can see in the top right corner, we have a big development that's being built. Can you tell us how higher your building is? I think you guys are making this nice.
I don't know what the height of their buildings are off the top of my head. I mean, they're
26 feet. 26 feet.
okay. 2 stories. So yes, we are higher, but we are still under our zoning code. You know. Sorry.
Can you explain how 1.5 parking spots per unit cars.
So we're meeting city zoning code. So, no, yes. So we're meeting city zoning code first and foremost, but then we also own an abundance of apartments here and other parts around the country. We rely most heavily on the data in this surrounding area, but this is probably a little bit overparked. If there was no requirement, we probably would have taken this, we probably would have parked it a little bit lower. Yes.
Why this area? Why this area? I mean, there's a lot of space in Colorado. Why did you put this area?
This is a nice community. It's a good area.
Homes are right in the street here, and we're single-family homes. We
It's-
moved here, bought these homes so that we could enjoy that area. But you don't want to come down the street and always look at apartments, but you see that other units over there. Because I'll be apartment units down here, and like,
So, I'll take a piece of it, Greg, and I'll
I'm
take
just
it over.
saying.
I hear you.
I speak for most of them.
So, you know, we own this site, we're looking at what it's zoned for, obviously we're pursuing conditional use. This is a good site either way. If residential doesn't come here, it's probably likely this will get built out as commercial.
Yes.
It might be 45 feet tall.
And you know what? Good. We have millions of people on Thursday.
I understand, but do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's a valid question, and we're talking to folks who have a single-family home in this area. I think my answer to you would be that I think a lot of people want to live here, and they don't have the means potentially to own a home right now. So, but there is an opportunity for us to build multifamily housing so other folks can have an opportunity to live in the same area that you do, to have the same. Okay. Sure.
Give him the microphone.
These people here, and myself, you know, we know you can put that someplace else.
Of course, I mean, come on.
And I'm surprised there's a red lake and there's other different like there. You know what I mean? I'm just-
We need to move on, there's a lot of.
Thank you. Ma'am, your stand up.
I would agree with this gentleman in terms of what.
Microphone, yeah, we can't hear.
Go ahead, you can do that.
I can
So
reiterate.
you've got 220 units is what you've planned. Where's their park?
Where's the park?
Where is their park?
So, in terms of what, for the residents there, or?
Correct.
So,
Where
we-
is their neighborhood park?
Sure. So right now, what we have planned is we have our leasing lobby and amenities here. We have a pool for our residents here. It's a modestly sized pool.
So that is a public
No,
pool?
this is private.
Right, so that.
Let me continue,
okay,
please.
All right.
And then right here, it's still undetermined. We are still working through design, but we're potentially putting a dog park here.
Again, that's private, right?
No,
So there's
to
no.
be determined on this piece of it.
Okay.
So I know, obviously, we see a lot of people walking dogs through here right now. We understand that. We think probably 50% of our residents here are going to own dogs. Like I said, we've really focused on trying to make these very livable apartments. We have balconies on the majority of units. We have lots of green space. We're trying to make this.
It's not lots of green space. This is only a 9.5 acre development. And I would agree, it's not appropriate to put residents right at the choke point and the entrance to Garden of Gods. This is what everybody is going to see. And, you know, I really feel that, you know, you're sticking this in here, but you're not really interested in those residents that are gonna live there and they don't have a park, or the only other park that they've got is Chipeta Park, which is, again, there's only 2.5 acres in our area right now, people to park ratio. And you've got all those apartments that have been filled up on Centennial. This choke point is, what I'm saying is that this is it doesn't fit here. It really, truly doesn't fit. I know you want to put something in there, but putting apartment buildings and stifling the view, not having an area for those residents, every single resident in here, when they put up apartment buildings, deserves the same park to people ratio. And they don't have it, and it will affect our quality. Everybody in this neighborhood is being impacted with less space and more people for that park to people ratio.
We have a
I'm going to
second.
say that's duly, oh, I'm sorry, oh, we did get that extra microphone, thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to say that's duly noted about the park space. We do meet city requirements, but it is going on record. I
I'm
hear
just
you.
saying that this is not fair to those residents there, as well as this community. And it's not just this community. This is the entrance to Garden of the Gods. That is the one thing that our founding fathers gave to this city, to everybody. And right now, it is overcrowded. It is hard to get to. And it's a shame, because when people come here from all over the world, and that place is packed, even in the winter now.
Yeah.
And and now we're gonna put more we're gonna put apartments right on this corner. Thank you.
I thank you for your passion, and it is duly noted about parks. And if we could limit the questions so that they cover a different comment, and if you agree with it, you're welcome to stand up and agree, but I think we need to, I see this woman who's been trying, we need to have someone kind of moderate and be keeping track of everyone. You wanted to say something quickly?
It's definitely different. Widener Inc., you know, you need to focus on being better, not bigger. You can't take care of the buildings you have. You've got lawsuits all over the country. You're known as the biggest slum landlord in Anchorage, Alaska.
Yeah. Whoa.
Right here on the west side in Colorado Springs at Eagle Ridge, do you read your reviews? People are suffering over there. You know, that's not okay. You don't need to build more, you need to take care of what you have. And Colorado Springs is not just a monopoly board for wealthy developers to play on. Okay, and you're talking about the need for housing, but you haven't even touched on the real need that we've got. Starter homes, so people can get out of the vicious cycle of rent and build some wealth. And your apartments are taking the land that we need for those starter homes. You're driving poverty.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Greg, would you like to respond at all? No, you don't have to respond. Okay. I'm going to go over here to this woman.
I'll just say real quick, we don't build single-family homes. We're a multifamily housing company that's an owner-developer for the last 46 years. I was in Anchorage last week, and I see exactly what we do on a regular basis for the underproduction of housing up there. So those statistics that the statistics that I gave to you in terms of housing that's been built before 1960, that is Anchorage, Alaska. So if you've ever been there, you would notice what kind of old projects that we have, and there's a multitude of reasons why there's no production happening up there as well.
So I'm going to speak, and I'll try to make this efficient. So first, I'm Danette Taylor. I'm a native of Colorado Springs. I've been in Mountain Shadows for 20 years. I was firmly into the fire. I've been at a couple of these meetings before. I've not got all of them. I want to just go back quickly over who is here from the city of Colorado Springs or planning. Anybody?
There is Bill Gray.
Bill? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, someone else that's with him.
Okay, Bill. So a couple of folks from planning here. And the other question, so we have, I think many of us didn't even know about this meeting if it wasn't for Nextdoor.com, and most of it, honestly, the city's communication bluntly sucks. There's a communications department. There's not good avenues for getting communication for public meetings. And really, honestly, it seems like cover-up when it's not promoted to like come to the meetings. And there are places for meetings on your calendar, the city calendar, and a communications department. So no, I mean, this could be 1,000 people, but many of us didn't know, and the timing doesn't always work. So just a comment on that. The other one is you had a great slide about, and I'd like to see it again, please, about the timeline and the process. The city has done the minimum. They met their standards, each little department, and it's very much finger pointing of, this isn't our area. No, somebody else does that. That's electric, that's utilities, that's parks. Separate stovepipes, but what's the timeline? Meeting the minimum requirements, which was planned in 2008. That was a different world. There was no Waldo. There was not all the people. There are all these other developments, Flying W, all the other stuff that's coming in. What's the timeline so we can get more involved with whatever's left? You own the property. It's billionaires making more billions, paying off other folks, and we have other interests. Quality of life, safety, priceless quality of life and safety, priceless Garden of the Gods. Ain't coming anywhere else. There's indigenous people. There are a lot of values that ain't in the billionaire's pocketbook. What's going on? We're all human beings. We're all doing the best we can with what we got. But your motivations, what you need and want, are a lot different than most of us as a community. Sorry for the speech, but you know what? I'm fired up. I believe in this community, and I want it long term. The city does not look at cumulative impacts. There are minimum standards, this is all we have to do. They're not looking at big picture. And what, if there's a commercial building and something doesn't really work out, it's a lot easier to get rid of than 300 people and all the leases and all the other stuff that goes with it.
Thank you. I'm losing track, and you've had a turn. Would you mind? I'm going to go to someone else and come back.
Laura?
Yes,
This gentleman.
thank you.
Good evening, Dwayne Anderson. I live in the Mountain Shadows with my wife. This is a traffic question for the gentleman. Could you define the difference between operational impact versus the fire evacuation impact in terms of the 347 cars trying to get out at this corner under a panic situation?
So, thank you for the question. I can only speak to the traffic study and the results of the traffic study. As it relates to fire evacuation, that is something that we don't look at.
Well, we look at it very seriously.
Wow, you're crazy.
That
plays well here. Shame on traffic impact studies,
You should look
weekday
at it.
operations along the roadways, the intersections.
Oh my God.
We make recommendations on improvements that are needed to do with weekday operations. Now, when it comes to fire evacuation, that falls into the city's department for review. I don't know the exact process, but that basically boils down to further conversations with the emergency management centers. And so I cannot speak to any of the fire evacuation.
Leitner doesn't care if we burn.
The city needs to look and take notes behind the city people that are sitting back here. Put that in the notes.
There is a representative, there's two representatives from the city.
Talking about fire evacuation.
If I could, there was a change in the process, Bill, help me out here, that the current administration says it is the responsibility of the developer to hold the community meetings and to facilitate them and to take notes back to their department. Did I summarize that correctly, the current administration?
You all hear me? Yes, Laura, thank you. My name is Mike Tassi. I'm the Assistant Planning Director, and that is a direction from the city administration. The city is not an advocate for these projects. We have to process the applications that get submitted, and the perception from the residents is that the city was advocating for these projects by being involved in facilitating the neighborhood meetings or public hearings, so the city is not going to do that. We are taking notes. We will pass these on to the developer, and we will put them in the background and backup information. We have made note of the evacuation comments. So that is the newer process with the city.
Try to get somebody we haven't talked to yet. I'll do you first, and then you, or vice versa, either way.
Yeah, I don't speak like this very often, but I just want to tell you guys what it was like during that fire. It was like an apocalyptic scene where we were trying to get out of here. We couldn't even get out of the neighborhood. And this was 2012. Lake.
Yeah.
Before we made National Park of the Year or whatever, and the tourism picked up, you still got a 2-lane road out here on 30th. It is going to be a nightmare. It's going to affect our tourism. It's going to affect everything. Our Rocky Mountain sheep that are up here.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we have up here?
Bighorn sheep.
Bighorn sheep are animals. You are defiling our foothills. At the very least, those need to come down to 2-story buildings and less of them.
Nick, I think what we're going to do for process is for those who are interested in asking a question, they can line up and speak into the microphone, and we keep this. And that was a recommendation by the audience, and I'm greatly appreciative of it.
I think that's good. So if we could get a single file line, please. And, as people come up to speak.
I'd like to say
Well,
something.
people are lining up.
Nothing. Well,
You could be.
thank you. That they want to do the minimum.
My question is, these are 3-story apartments. How are they regarded?
So it's terminology. It's just terminology. It's
Okay, well, way back in that November meeting, you wanted input from the community, and we talked about how tall these buildings are and how you can't see the mountains, you know, with them blocking the view. And you said tonight, I got the impression tonight, you said that you want to blend in with the community. However, 3-story apartments does not blend in. As close to the street as you're putting them, they're right in your face. That doesn't blend into the community. If you could cut them down to two stories, push them back somehow, I think we'd be a lot happier.
Thank you for your feedback. We hear you on that. When we started designing buildings, we've put everything basically in compliance with city code.
I don't want to hear about city code.
I think we need to move on, Nick.
First of all, thanks for being here. Appreciate your data and the pictures and all that stuff.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of comments. As far as the parking at Red Lake, to me, I hear it's their responsibility and all that. That's a major safety issue, because what people are going to do, and these are people that are drinking beer, are going to be parked on Garden of God's Road, and they're going to park on other areas, but primarily on Garden of God's Road, it's easy. So that's going to create more of a problem for the police, because you're going to have traffic hazards, drunk people are going to be pulling out in traffic. So to me, there's a more responsibility to at least get with Red Lake, talk about how are we going to address this safety issue, because it is a safety issue. We talk about being, wanting to be involved with the community and things like that. So I think that to me is a really major issue. So if you could possibly put it on your list of things to talk about and somehow get to a resolution on that. I personally don't want this to go up, but if it does, that's going to be a major issue. And I think the second one for me is, if you could go back to the questions slide, please. I got it. Great. So I think this building here, this 300-foot, 2-story building is really a problem for me. I have a feeling that this, I hate to say it, is a done deal. Unfortunately, you own the property, something's going up there. But for me, I heard 2-story buildings. I think that's a really great suggestion. But I think, when you go up this road, you see Pikes Peak and all the beauty and the grandeur of what this place is about. You're putting up a 300-foot wall there. To me, that's just tragic. So, the other stuff I can a little bit fathom, but that to me is just a major, major issue. So I think for me personally, I'm sure other people agree, for me personally, this would be a lot more palatable if there was nothing there. And people, you can still talk to people, you're not destroying that view that all of us enjoy when we come up Garden of the Gods. I go to the right, but I always look to the left, and that's one of the reasons I live here. So if you could consider that, please, on your list of things to do, that'd be greatly appreciated too. Thanks very much.
Thank you for both.
I have a question for the traffic engineer. There's a bike lane that goes into along 30th Street, and where it comes into this intersection here. Was that part of your traffic study at all? Because this is a pretty steep slope, and a lot of people on bikes can get going pretty fast here, and I think that's a potential danger right there. No, not a bike lane, but a bike path.
So to answer your question, we did not specifically look at the continuation of the bike lane or the bike path, but there is opportunities potentially through coordination with city staff to see how, or even learn what their plans are for any of that extension. I just don't know at this time.
There's a lot we don't know about.
Hi, my name is Sean Hardy. There's been a lot of emotional appeals about the fire evacuation because we've been through it. I wanted to make a logical appeal as to what's really going on. In 2012, when the fire came through, we had to evacuate. It took people more than 4 hours to clear, just to get out of the neighborhood, and that's entirely too long. Since then, we built apartments or townhomes on Centennial, so the population has increased, but there have been no improvements to the road. So if you're just thinking logically, if the evacuation wasn't adequate in 2012, and you've added a lot more people, and you want to add, I'm guessing 400 more people to the equation, and none of the roads have been improved, it doesn't matter what all your traffic studies say. If it didn't work in 2012, you've added more people, you're not going to have evacuation in timely fashion if we have to do that again.
Yep.
I mean, I think that in terms of fire evacuation, again, I cannot speak to the details of fire evacuation. That is a dynamic situation.
We can.
So all I can do is relay the information, the last information that I've heard from the city, and that's the fire department, that's the police department. And during the times of emergencies, fire evacuation, it's dynamic. They will look at areas that need to be evacuated, pre-evacuation notices, and develop plans to exit people, egress people. And that could be through various means, such as turning Gardens of the Gods into, right now it's 6 lanes each direction. It could be opening it up to 6 lanes in an outbound direction, out to I-25.
It didn't work.
So they do have plans in place that are, that's their specialty. They have, I'm just repeating some stuff that I've heard, but in past comments, and Mr. Weissong, I'm sure will expand on some more of this, but there is, the latest that I heard was statements from fire department saying that in this particular area, they feel that they can adequately evacuate people when they need to.
First of all, Bill Weissong, President of Mountain Shadows, and also President of West Side Watch, which some of you. One of the things that I did want to say, when I met with Laura and we talked about the meeting at Wilson Church, that was a bonus. We really are, for all of us in here that live in the community, and for Mike and Bill in the back that work, for the city, the developer is going to do what the city allows them to do. Yep. And so the biggest beef that needs to be distributed here is to the city.
Yep.
There are some good points that have been brought up. I absolutely agree with this building here. That was brought up, I think, at both meetings last year. Likewise, you've got a 3-story building there. You know, move the clubhouse over there, so it's again a little smaller, so that it's not quite so high. And Mike is correct as far as the evacuation traffic. It is only going to get worse. It's been proven. We run the models. However, the city has chosen to ignore those models. And ordinances and everything that we proposed, again, it's not the developer. And one of the things that, for most of you that came in, you were handed out a flyer. I'm trying to tie this into what you guys are doing. I've spent almost all week working with the state fire committee. And we're having a tough go with it because a number of people have been telling the state people, we don't want to do this. Well, that's other government people, including, unfortunately, our own fire chief. So there is a petition that we would like you to use the QR code and sign the petition. And we've been working with Mark Schneider, representative in the House, State House. So he also needs to hear from you. The last point I'd like to bring up is as it pertains to evacuation, we know that we're building out. Can you go back to your original slide about the commercial entity here? Because and this is going to be a Bill Gray question. What code are they actually building to? UDC or the old Chapter 7?
This application is being reviewed under the previous code.
Okay, so it's the previous code. Okay, thank you.
February 2022 for the adoption.
You'll notice that we've got a gas station here, and whatever this commercial building is up against the gas station, so you don't have all of that huge 3-story building right on Garden of the Gods. So when you say that there might be a little more traffic, if you look at the square footage of those buildings, it's a heck of a lot smaller than the 3-story apartments. So those are some of the things that we're seeing, that this would be more palatable from a site picture than the 3-story apartments.
One thing I do want to add on here, and it's really hard to get this impression from just a black and white site plan, but this is almost 100% impervious. That means it's all building or it's all parking lot. There's very, very little landscaping. It's basically you have, your Jiffy Lube here, your Napa Auto Parts there, so on and so forth, just parking. That's what this would mean, essentially, or could be.
Yep, could be.
And we'd like to say these 4 are our last 4 comments. So, you please take the time you need, but.
Okay, hopefully this will be fairly quick. You keep referring to this 45-foot building height allowed. It's my understanding that that is a generic height requirement for that zoning area, okay? Can you tell me that that overrides the hillside offset requirement?
Yeah, that architectural question.
This hillside would not override that height here. This is a preconditioned site where all these lots have been early graded 25 years ago, 30 years ago. So the condition here is at that plateau that's already there. The bench is already set, and that's what we built from.
Yes, but it's my understanding that you have to do a hillside offset study to make sure you're not obscuring the skyline of the hillside from the perspective of the road.
I understand.
And that if that 45-foot height is blocking that, then that 40-foot height has to be reduced to where you meet that hillside offset.
It's not from the road, it's the site itself. So, because there's plenty of houses up on the hill in Mount Shadows from Centennial, right?
But they aren't high enough to block the skyline.
Understand that. This won't either. Again, this is below the ridge line that we indicated earlier. It's about 95 feet lower than the current ridge behind it. And the existing conditions there that we are building on would still allow us to build a 45-foot building. Because it's already been, and maybe staff could talk more about that too, but
Yeah,
the fact is.
I'm not an expert. I mean, it's up to the city to hold that requirement. And again, I'm looking for the city to be protecting the people who live in this area and our view, because people at the Red Leg aren't gonna, I mean, you've got a site line going right through the middle here where you didn't have any tall buildings. You didn't show this building along here blocking the view. So you had a cherry-picked view, and I think that study would require you to look at the worst-case scenarios. And I don't know what you mean by from that site, because if I'm standing right next to a building, I'm not gonna be able to see anything.
The buildings
So
that
it has
we're
to be a
looking at,
perspective.
the buildings that you're looking at would be like the ones that are similarly built just to the east of this.
But they're
Those are much
10 feet
smaller.
lower, 12 feet lower.
It's the same measurement all the way up that bench.
They're much smaller.
Yeah, as far as the entitlements go.
Well, I haven't done the study, I don't know how it's done, I'm just saying, my gut feel is that if you did a due diligence on the hillside offset, it would not allow a 45-foot building there. And the city needs to be held responsible to do that.
Yeah, and
I
as
can't
they
tell
said-
you that.
As they said, they're taking those notes down, and that'll be part of their process as they review the application. So, thank you.
Would you bring me back to the previous slide? Okay, so previous conversations about this area. Someone in your graphics department was able to show, coming up here,
You have to talk in the microphone.
this is 26 feet. This is 45 feet. 38, 26 and 38. It would be nice to have a graphic showing when you're coming up this street, what it's going to look like between this height and this height. Also, you mentioned the need for space and housing, and our city has put up so many apartment buildings down on Redbird, Pine Street. And I'm sure your company has maybe billions of dollars. I would ask, why this place? There's still a lot of land out by Mark Shekel. You can take this whole property and build it out there. There is a sense of place, if you know what I mean. There's a sense of place about this neighborhood. Your project is not going to fit in with that sense of place.
It does not fit.
You know, I grew up in New York City. People coming from New York, and they will say, why in the world did they stick that there? Bottom line, it's a bad idea. It's a very bad
Hi, my name is Lawrence Starr, live in Mountain Shadows. So there are two things that concern me, the traffic study, the person who did the traffic study. And I also heard at the beginning, it was said that, oh, well, we did our previous traffic study while 30th was
closed. Well, you know, it could be closed again at some point in time. And also, I know that it was made clear that the evacuation study was not part of what was reported. However, fire does not time itself for when there are no projects. So I think whoever did that study needs to assume that there could be a major fault that's happening, like closed 30th, it's dug up or something like that. And I hope that when you did that study for just operational, that you've done that. Because this is very constrained. This is like a house without many egress, without many windows. It's like you're building something without bedroom windows. That's what it looks like to me, because people are going to have to be coming out of all these different areas. But the second thing I have to say to that, is this the Wagner Group? I don't know why, or I don't know what you hear when you hear us talking about concerns with evacuation, and you kind of lob that over to the city. I think that you should be more concerned than us, because you're going to have to rent to people, and you're going to have to tell them that they're going to have a safe way out. So coming in here without knowing anything about evacuation and saying, well, that's something for the city to handle, I don't know how you'll be able to clear consciously rent to 200 and some people without knowing that. And that's something that's very serious and concerned me, that you would come in here without knowing that, even though it might have been somebody else's responsibility. You should be asking those questions.
That's right. Thank you. And I would just add to that, and I hear the passion in this room. I was your city's chief of staff during the Waldo Canyon fire. I worked for Mayor Steve Bach. I experienced it. I did not live in your neighborhood, but I worked round the clock 24/7 for 10 days in a row. I experienced what you all experienced, but we do have to rely on our city officials who are highly trained in evacuation when they report back to us. If we cannot, you're all saying no, okay?
No.
No confidence.
improvements to the road, how is this evacuation going to be any better?
Correct.
I gotta say something here.
I can't respond on behalf of our fire marshal or our fire chief, but I will say that they are taking copious notes, and it's not just all on the city, it's on us too. And we will be reviewing this. So your voices have been heard, and this lady needs to talk because she's been standing in line, okay? And so she's following the...
OEM is not trained. I met with the OEM. They do not have the proper tools to evacuate us from these neighborhoods. We've given them the opportunity, the city and the OEM, the opportunity to use the proper tools. They refuse to do it. If you look at this picture that everybody has, you can see how horrible of a job they did in the evacuation of Waldo Fire. They did a contraflow, which, if you know what that means, all 6 lanes Woodman, right?
Okay, I think I'm hearing you.
All right.
What he's saying is about the Office of Emergency
They
Management.
back the
Yes.
traffic all the way up to the fire because they do not know how to manage an evacuation. That's OEM in this city.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, that is duly noted.
Okay, just one final thing I'd like to say about this building, if you would add it to your notes. Okay, because it is the height that you're requesting, 36, 38, it's 3 stories. If you drive down Rock Rimmon, either side of Rock Rimmon, either way, every winter, this building faces the same way, you get an ice dam built up in the road that stays there for 3 to 4 months. They cannot clear it. It's too thick. Nobody can walk on the sidewalk. So you have a trail through here that will be an ice dam because of the size of this building. So this is just another point to lower the size of this building.
Remove it.
Or remove it.
Remove it.
Remove it.
This is the final question.
You kindly put up that very first overhead. My name is Jeff Norton, Mountain Shells Community Association Board. The very first slide, please. Go ahead.
Can you describe, this is phase one, can you describe what your plans are for phase two? As it directly might impact additional traffic and issues associated with it?
We have zero plans for any other development here at this time.
There's no phase two.
None.
You're on the record. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out, and like I said, we want it to be hearing what you have to say, responding to it, we're taking notes. We'll connect with the city, and we'll get some communication back to you, but thank you for your time.